Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam. This is the Sunday garden question and answer video that I do pretty much every Sunday. You can ask gardening questions down in the comment section below the video, and that's where I pick from them each week. I think I got like 24 or something written down from this past week. There are always a ton of great questions. Holly's back here exploring back here behind me. There's always a ton of great questions, so thank you guys very much for participating, and continue to ask them, and I'll continue to do these videos each week. At some point I'll do a live one. I've been thinking about, I think maybe she'll pop in and out of the screen back there, but she's exploring. Okay, let's see. There's still a $25 discount code for the Learn to Garden video series down below this video and most every video on the channel. Thank you all who took advantage of the larger discount during the month of December. There was quite a few of you that signed up for it, so I really appreciate that, and there'll continue to be content added. Those of you who have it will have gotten an email this week about the tree video that went up on there for this week, and I've already shot something else for it for next week. I don't remember what it is right now. Of course, I should have probably written that down in the little blue book. Let's see. Videos that went up this week. One about the entry garden out at the road, which I just took out a lot of the kind of weedier things. Not weedy, but trying to make it a little more the same all the time out there by the road, and then when you come into the garden, more herbaceous things inside the garden, but outside have it be the same, when you see it, so that it's, it was too changeable. That's what I'll say. There's a bulb video that should have gone up, planting some bulbs out here that we didn't have in the landscape. We have a lot of bulbs in this landscape, and they are unfortunately all up. And many of them, 3 and 4 inches at this point, because it's pretty abnormally warm. Let's see. And then a neighborhood walk around tour. So if you like those neighborhood walk around tour videos, let me know, below that video if you watched it yesterday. As you're watching this one, my neighborhood offers a lot of opportunity. There comes Holly. Offers a lot of opportunity to shoot some interesting plants. Okay, so let's jump into some questions. One thing, make sure you include your zones you live in if you're asking specific plant questions, because that can be helpful, because sometimes I don't necessarily know how to answer it unless I know kind of where you live, or what area of the country you live in. Let's see. The first question is, somebody asked about leaving the leaves in the trench edge. So there's a couple edging videos on the channel, and I do trench edging, where I basically cut a sharp line around the turf or a path or something like that, and just fade the mulch up into the bed. If you watch the entry garden video, I took my shovel and made a little trench edge, so that when I mulch that bed, the mulch just falls up against the curb and doesn't go over top of the curb and out into the street. Some will, but that trench edge, they were asking about, should you leave your leaves in the trench through the winter? Yes, because that is definitely an exposed space normally, especially if you've done if you're working on it pretty frequently. That's any soil you're bringing up to the top is going to be a place for weeds to germinate. So yes, I would, if you've got the opportunity, I would leave leaves in that trench edge during the winter time when you don't care as much about how crispy it looks or whatever, or something. Make sure that after you trench edge or refresh your trench, there needs to be some remulching or leaves or something going in there. Otherwise, you are going to have, weed-related issues. So somebody asked about feeding the dogs from the garden. I don't even remember what the question was. It was a joke, but Griffin loves broccoli. And I mean, really loves broccoli. He likes green beans too for some reason, but broccoli is high on the list. And you can give him the stalk of a broccoli plant and he'll turn it into a toy and he'll chew on it for days. Absolutely crazy about broccoli. I think I'm going to go ahead and put Holly inside. Holly had been out here for like an hour and a half, so I went ahead and put her inside. Yes, Griffin will eat vegetables out of the vegetable garden. Holly will not look at them a second time. She'll look at you like, what are you talking about, and drop it and move on with her day. Somebody asked about a few plants that I'm excited about for next year, and I talked about last week. I'm at a nursery trade show next week and talking about some upcoming, new plants while I'm there for sure. And they wanted to know a few that I was excited about. I happen to have a few things that probably have no availability yet, or limited availability. And one of the things they had said in their question is they were excited about Autumn Moonstruck. This is the variegated Encore azalea, and man, does this thing look just absolutely fantastic. Great variegation. Great flowers. It had flowers on it up until this past week. Finally got a night, that was cold enough to knock the rest of the flowers back, but it's budded up for next spring. And I've seen a couple of the other Encores coming after this one. Man, there's some good stuff coming down the pipe there. And then this is a Mahonia called Silver Caress. And so if you've seen Soft Caress on the channel, this one has a silvery hue to it. Great flowering. Really good looking plant. The one I have in my hand right now I've got two in the garden over there that actually look better than this one, or bigger than that one. This dwarf Abelia right here, this is Suntastic Pink, and it's extremely compact, much more compact than Miss Lemon back here, and just really, you can tell by the size of the leaves are smaller, just how compact this thing's actually going to be. And you can see how bright and showy it is right here in January. Let's see. I think that Mahonia is going to be a little while before you see it at retail. I think you can find this Autumn Moonstruck Encore azalea this spring probably. It's been out there in the world of growers for a while. And then this Misty River Osmanthus, which is flowering right now, fragrant flowers on it. Going to be a while before you see this one at garden centers and stuff, but this one is going to be a big seller. Fragrant flowers most of the winter, incredible variegated foliage, limited growing area. It's definitely a southern plant. The Encores, I don't think that one's zone 6. Maybe it's 6B. I can't remember. 7. The Abelia is definitely zone 6. That Mahonia is probably only zone 7 to 9. But that Marvel Mahonia that's yellow, I don't think you could see it through the tree, but it's full bloom right now. That one's actually zone 6. So there are zone 6 Mahonia. So there's a few things. That Tokyo Skies cast iron plant, that's another one that I think is going to just sell like crazy. Beautiful, striking cast iron plant. So there's another one, but there's a lot. And kind of fun that, new and interesting plants, and continuing to make improvements in what were already great plants, like dwarf variegated Abelia. Great plants already, but we're seeing some come now that are really compact, and really can be kept small. For those of you who have low foundations or need, evergreen plants that are only going to get a foot and a half tall, but, wider than that. Of course, they bloom all summer as well as a bonus. So somebody asked, why no Lonicera sempervirens in the garden? Trumpet honeysuckle. No particular reason, other than I don't do a whole lot of vines. There's three clematis out front. There's a fourth one going in. I have a grand total of maybe 6 vines out here. Any more than that, it's there can be some maintenance on them. When I was doing the neighborhood walk around video, we walked past one that was blooming. It was just really wild on a church, 5 or 6 blocks from here, which was kind of wild for January. But no particular reason. I like trumpet honeysuckle. There's probably a maximum number of vines I would have, because they do require some maintenance. And I've done landscape jobs taking out really aggressive vines that were just left, to just grow and grow and grow over the years, and really kind of regretted accepting those jobs, because they're hard. They can be hard to get back under control if you ever lose control over them. Let's see. Somebody asked about types of plants above gas and water lines. Most people, most gardens that you go to, the gas, I don't even know where the gas line is running at this house. So we have natural gas here. I have no idea where it's running. That gas line's probably pretty deep down in the ground, and so I don't really think about it. The cable line, unfortunately, frequently is really shallow. It's like they're almost, so you need to get the lines marked when you come into the house. But then after that, I don't think about it I don't really think about it all that much. I'm not encouraging anybody to plant over anything. I don't want to be the responsible for any damage that's caused or anything else, but I've just never really put a lot of thought into it, other than I don't want to cut, you know, the lines. But my cable line, I know right where it runs out there, and one of the garden paths in the front, it runs right down the middle of it, and it's barely covered at all because, you know, I don't know why. I don't think they want to cut anybody else's lines. That's why they put them in so shallow. But I know the angle that it runs, and so I know which way to use my shovel to find the line instead of cutting the line. You know, so I taught my guys that, because sometimes we would have to dig in an area no matter what. So we would need to find the cable line, and then we, you know, kind of know exactly where, even after we gotten it marked. Sometimes the marks aren't exact, you know. So anyway, I'm not telling you what to plant or not to plant, but most people have something planted above a gas line or cable line, or, you know, any of these buried lines out in their gardens. And people put stuff right around the electric box, you know, to hide the electric box, which actually makes the electric box stand out more. You know, in my opinion, I would make those beds bigger so it draws the eye away from the electric box. Well, when you put 5 plants right around it in a circle, frequently I go, oh, there's the electric box. You know, it's like the same thing with a mailbox. You know, mailbox plantings are like, there's the mailbox. Where when I would do design and installation on those things, if I was going to put a bed around the mailbox, I would make the bed stretch out into the garden a bit so that it took your eye away from the mailbox and not right to the mailbox. Anyway, just random thoughts on a question about planting over gas and water lines. I did it forever. The things to avoid, though, if you have any concerns about roots and lines and, you know, damage from things, I mean, don't plant weeping willows. And, you know, my Kwanzaa cherry at the old house was one of the more aggressive things that I had planted out there. River birches, super aggressive. Red maples are super aggressive rooting. What else would pop in my mind? I had a dawn redwood. Oh my gosh, the roots were this big around on it, running all over the garden. So, you know, there are plants to avoid for sure, you know, that can do some damage to those things. But again, I never put a whole lot of thought into it, other than you definitely need to get them marked so you're not cutting them and you're not responsible for, you know, those types of damages to them initially. But it's really hard on a small lot with all those lines coming in, if your electric's buried and your gas is buried and your cable's buried, to not garden around them, and your water's buried, you know. So I just keep gardening, but I know where they are, so I don't cut them. Okay, so somebody asked, why don't I have ornamental grasses? This is the why don't I have video. Why aren't there any ornamental grasses here in the garden? This garden, somebody answered it, and it was the perfect answer, because this is, I think ornamental grasses look best in large groupings. So if I go over to the in that walk around video for the neighborhood, the white cloud mully grass over at the rose garden, absolutely beautiful, planted in mass. And I think that's where grasses really shine, is when they're planted in mass. On a 0.19 acre lot where the house is sitting in the middle of it in the driveway, I got this building back here. You know, there's not a lot of planting space here, and I didn't want to dedicate it to large groupings of ornamental grasses. I love ornamental grasses, I absolutely do. I admire it, and I have a video that I haven't put up where I've taken photos of lots and lots of them across the whole country, actually. And I want to put that video together at some point and show some love for ornamental grasses. But here in this garden, you probably won't see that, just because, you know, sometimes just like one ornamental grass standing up big and tall doesn't really give the effect of the wind moving them about and that kind of thing. Again, in my opinion. So, but I recommend it all the time. If you have, you know, I get consultations, somebody has a 2 acre lot, and it's a full sun space, and it's on some sort of little bit of slope where it's a little tricky to landscape, perfect opportunity for large swaths of beautiful ornamental grasses, for sure. But that's the main reason. It's just space required to show them off in this garden just doesn't exist. So somebody asked, recommendations for new landscape after construction. So they've got what they know is going to be super, super compacted soil. There's a house being built. There's 2 right now going on in here, and they've covered the whole front area in gravel, you know, and they've parked their vehicles on it the whole time the construction of the house is going on. They'll scrape a little space off, get it back down to the clay, and do whatever sodding or planting or whatever they're going to do out there. But it's all super, super, super compact. You know, for me, you know, I know the way some of these landscapes work. I was able, because the last house I was in, I bought it while it was under construction, and I was able to do the landscaping myself. And so basically when I moved into that house, the county required 7 shrubs and 1 tree to be planted, but the property already had trees, so I didn't have to do that. I just had to put 7 plants in the ground and to get the CO to be in the house. And that's, you know, that's kind of what I want to do. I don't really want a $5,000, $6,000, $20,000 budget on the house for landscaping if I'm going to be doing a lot of it on my own. I would rather get the minimum amount done to get into the house, and then I can work on it myself, because I'd like to compost those beds at a minimum before they're done. If I can use wood chips or something like to really improve the space, I would rather do that. And so my strategy would be to have the landscaper do as little as possible, the builder to do as little as possible, so I can come in and do corrective things before they just slap plants in the ground. Again, I don't know who the landscaper is. It could be great work. So I'm generalizing, but a lot of times the builders, landscapers are the lowest bidder, you know, for a job. And I've done new construction landscaping, so I'm very familiar with the process of getting an entire neighborhood to be able to landscape. I did a bunch of them in Cary, North Carolina for another company, and you know, we sodded the front yard, put 7 shrubs, 1 tree, seeded the back, made sure the drainage was okay, and we left. So it didn't matter what compaction or anything else that was done there. And it was, you know, the builder's giving you $1,600 for all that, or whatever it was at that time 30 years ago. It was very little money. You had to have 3 or 4 of them in a day, you know, to be able to actually make any money, you know, doing that type of landscaping. But that's the way it was done. Your builder may be a higher level with a better landscaper. I don't know. But I would prefer to get in there and do it myself and be able to compost those beds and maybe I till it the first time. You know, I always talk about tilling is killing, but I tilled my vegetable garden over here the first time, and I broke it up pretty deep with some compost there and got it started. Since then, I don't till it anymore, but just throwing those things out that they won't do anything to really relieve that compaction. It's just going to take time. You know, soil will come back, but it takes a minute. And if you could do it with wood chips, that's the best way to do it. So somebody's using free leaves. They're basically just grinding up leaves from neighbors or, you know, from their local municipality, whatever. Is it advisable to change mulch type year to year? I think you'd be fine using leaves over and over and over. My buddy around the corner who was in the Leave the Leaves video, cutting up his leaves on the driveway with his electric lawnmower, you know, blowing it out there on the driveway and cutting it up and putting it back in the beds. He always uses leaves. He goes to Raleigh Dump and gets them, you know, after they suck them up off the roads everywhere. And he has great success with them over there. I don't think you'd need to change up mulches if you were using them. But they did say they were mulching once a year, and it'd be difficult to probably have leaves break down pretty quickly once the process starts. They're a little slow to get started especially if they're not ground up, but then they go away pretty quick. So I'm wondering if it's pretty bare probably by the time you're the end of an entire year and the leaves start dropping again. I really don't know, but I think you could probably just use that same mulch without any problem. And I use the double or triple shredded hardwood over and over and over again. The only time I'll switch is a couple times over the 23 years I was at the old house. I noticed my mulch really starting to build up. It wasn't breaking down as well. And so I pine strawed, you know, just a decorative thin layer of pine straw over the top of it, and I let it break down a little bit more before I added some more. Because there is a point where the mulch gets so thick that you end up with dry sockets in there and it won't break down. It's just sitting there in kind of a stasis. So I let it break down a little bit more. I don't think you'll have that problem with leaves unless you're, dumping them, a foot deep or something. Okay, so somebody says they use pine straw to mulch. Is it okay to compost under it? Yeah, absolutely. And you probably need to, more so than you would with any other mulch, because I've talked about pine straw. It just takes forever for pine straw to build soil. I mean, most of your pine straw just shrinks as soon as you put it down. You'll see it gets smaller almost immediately because water evaporates out of it. And it doesn't add a whole lot to the soil. It's good for protecting the roots from heat and holding in soil moisture and hopefully reducing some weeds and all the other things that mulches do, but it's not necessarily as good at building soil. So I would almost encourage you, if you are going to be using pine straw, to start off with some sort of compost layer underneath it that will help as well. So somebody said, where did I finally find the shovel? If you go, there's a video on the channel from about 2 weeks ago about my favorite tool and the whole explanation of the shovel. I had somebody email me a photo of the shovel that is it right here? I think it's in the front of the house, actually. Oh, no. These just stay right here. Okay. Very interesting video where I just walk away occasionally. So here's the old shovel right there. Let me set this book down real quick. Look at the difference in the length of these two. Look how much that thing's been used over time. The other thing is it's got this little lip right here. I'll drop that one right there to step on, which is helpful. Mine is just completely gone, so now I just put holes in the bottom of my shoes right there. It's also super, super thick, which is interesting. I didn't remember it being as thick. But anyway, somebody sent me a photo of it. Then I found it online. I've got them linked down below that other video, and I'll link it down below this video as well. But there's the trenching. There's the amount I've used that shovel over. It's lasted a long time. The fiberglass, though, the handle, I don't know if you can see it, but it does have some cracks in it. And if you've ever broken one of these fiberglass handles while you're using it, it's not a fun experience. But that's 20 some years of that. They changed the top handle is now improved, but it's not inexpensive. It's not an inexpensive shovel. But if you get 30 years out of something, not bad, not too bad. Let's see. Next up, can I throw out organic fertilizer now or throw it over my mulch? So they're about to mulch. Should they go ahead and throw the organic fertilizer out now underneath it? You could if you wanted to. It won't do anything because, the beneficial microbes and bacteria are not active, and that's what it feeds. I've talked about this a bunch of times. I throw mine right over the mulch later. The bag will tell you to pull back your mulch and put it around the base of the plant. I ain't about to do that because for all I might gain by having the fertilizer work a little better around the base of the plant, I'm going to lose all that time and the amount of weeding I'm going to have to do, because pulling that mulch back is just going to expose all those weed seeds that are buried down in the ground. And I just saw a study, I think it was Michigan State, did a study, some seeds that are over 100 years old that they had buried somewhere. They had done something with to, put them down in the soil for some length of time. And it's over 100 years, and some percentage of the seeds were viable of some things. Their seeds will have, their viability, their germination percentage. If you have 100 seeds and you try to start them and 96 of them come up out of 100, you have a 96% germination rate, obviously. Math. As years go on, that germination rate on any group of seeds will drop. So if you have a packet of seed that's 3 years old, it might have dropped to 78% or something like that. Some of those seeds, by some crazy, some crazy number of them, will survive for decades and decades and decades, depending on what it is. Some seeds are a lot less, shorter lived than others, but there are seeds down in your soil for sure. If you take a tablespoon of soil out of your garden, some percentage of that is seeds, from old weeds. So if you pull that mulch back, you're exposing those things. Some of them are going to come up, and then you're going to spend the summer, weeding up under your plants. To say that my mulch was 12% more effective, or, I'm just throwing out some random silly number there, but you know what I mean. So I'm always going to throw it over the top and not worry about it all that much. Okay. So somebody said they're in Zone 7B, Atlanta, 8A on the new map, I'm sure. And is it too late to plant agave, or should they wait? I actually answered that in the entry redesign video out at the street. I have an agave. I would not put it in the winter time in the southeast United States, just because it's wet soil right now, and it would not like to go into that. So I would wait until spring, and then make sure you're mounding it up. Make sure you're using some like expanded slate in the soil, whatever you're doing. Just make sure. I probably wouldn't put it in the winter time. It couldn't use any of the water it'd be sitting in, and it would likely rot. And of course, we don't know what kind of temperatures we have coming either. The rest of the winter, and I don't know if that agave came out of a greenhouse, or where it's been sitting. Mine's just outside. It's 28 degrees. It's in a container, but I have it under the shelter so the rain can't get into it. So somebody asked if sun needed for the root collar all the way up to the canopy. So, do the stems and everything on the plant, require sun or utilize sun? I'm sure there are plants that can photosynthesize through stems. And it's incredible. It's a lot of desert plants are that way. You'll see green stems, so there is some evolution there for plants that can photosynthesize through limbs and stems and trunks and all kinds of things out in the desert. But because they'll have limited amount of leaves because they're trying to prevent rabbits and other things from eating them. Everything out in the desert is trying to prevent itself from being eaten, because if it gets eaten, it's impossible to recover. Desert environments are actually more sensitive than like woodland environments in the east. I can cut every tree down and every single thing back there behind me, and in 20 years you won't know I did it. Okay? You do that in a desert environment, and who knows when or if things come back, because it just they have to have all the right conditions in order for seeds to germinate and for things to happen in a desert. So we look at them and think they're tough, rugged places, but the plants that are there are they're in a tough spot, in a tough pickle. But there are plants that utilize the stems to photosynthesize. But most plants in your garden don't need sun all the way down to the bottom, and you'll see they do. Most of the plants, though, larger growing plants, you'll almost all see them growing in some sort of Christmas tree shape, and that's to get the sunlight down to the branches and the leaves or the needles all the way down to the bottom of the plant. A lot of times I see people pruning, boxing off plants, and they leave them completely angled up and down, okay? And now the sun can't actually get to the bottom of the plant, and you'll likely get thinning down at the bottom of it. If you are pruning a hedge, step it back just a bit. That's how the plant would naturally grow, and then you can get sunlight down to the bottom and more likely keep those leaves down at the bottom of the plant happy. If it decides it doesn't need them because there's no light down there anyway, it'll shed them. So, but anyway, that answer's all over the place. We went from deserts to cutting all the trees down behind me. Next up, somebody is moving from one place to another. They're moving to a little more acreage to do a little more gardening. And they're talking about when to dig out some of the plants that they're going to be taking with them, strategies and, priorities. If you're going to be moving larger trees and shrubs, the sooner you go out there and root prune them, the better. So if I was moving, as an example, if I was moving this weeping redbud, I'd want to come out here and just kind of cut the roots right around that drip zone sooner than later, even if it was going to be 6 months before I took it out of the ground, so I could kind of containerize it in the ground, and it'll be much easier to get it out later. May not be easier to get it out, but it will certainly be, the plant will be a little healthier because it will regenerate some roots back into the middle of what will be the root ball. Make sure that if you're listing your house, that the plants that you're taking with you are in the listing. I need to throw that out there right now, because if once you've listed the house, kind of as is, they'll own those plants. Just depending on how the deal is. I know that Jeremy included a list of plants that he was taking when they listed their house down. We've seen that stone garden he has, but I think there was a list of plants he was going to take with him, and it was in the contract. So that's important. Again, priority wise, most perennials, when they're dormant. I took out all those perennials along the street out by the road. As most of those perennials start to break dormancy in the spring, that would be a good time to lift them. Go ahead and get them in containers. I would not want to be lifting them out of the ground in July or August in the heat of the summer. So the herbaceous things, as they start to wake up in the spring, get them containerized. Woody shrubs, trees that you're going to take with you, go ahead and cut the roots on them now sooner than later. And that way when you're ready to take them, you can. And then, of course, then they asked me about good techniques for starting over. And I think you could probably watch the beginning of the series of videos here for this new house about us, composting and using wood chips and those kinds of things. And the path I'm standing on right now is just, you wouldn't believe it if you were walking on it right now. It was one thing I pointed out on a few garden tours here this year, is if you walk around on this path, you can actually feel the sponginess underneath you everywhere in this garden. Whether I'm in a bed or I try not to walk in the beds a whole lot, but you have to some, obviously. But all of these paths, all of that's life, that sponginess underneath. And so getting that soil alive, and using organic material to do that is the way to go. So somebody, they have an exposed spot at the top of a retaining wall, and they want something that's structurally interesting at the top of it. They had said they might think about using a deciduous magnolia, and that would certainly work. And they, in the winter time, even without leaves, they're usually structurally interesting. But something like a Hollywood juniper, I really like. I'm really drawn to if you want something that's just kind of, interesting and all over the place. If you had 100 Hollywood junipers, you'd have 100 different looking plants. It's an interesting one, but my suggestion would be, if you're looking for something that's structurally interesting, is to go to a garden in your area and see, I could go over to the Ralston right now and probably find 20 different conifers and other structurally interesting trees like this weeping redbud this time of year, especially important in the winter time, how it looks, but I think this would be a good time of year to be out looking in your area for things like that. It's up at the top of the hill, so it may have some wind. I don't know where they were, but if it has some wind related issues, you may want to think about having something that's a little more cold hardy than your area if it's really exposed. Okay. Somebody wants to have a witch hazel in zone 8B in South Carolina. That should be fine. They're going to bloom really, really early. That's one thing, about witch hazel. And then I think they asked, why I don't have a witch hazel. So hold on just a second. I actually love witch hazels, and as warm as it's been, it wouldn't be surprising if there's a few blooming in the area right now. But I do have a lot of things from the witch hazel family, and I was doing some videos on plant families, I think early last year or the end of the year before, and I kind of got away from it. But it is interesting to see the things that are related in our gardens. Down here below, right down here on the ground, I've got a Distilium, which is an evergreen shrub that gets those little frilly red flowers along the stems. It's in that same family, in that witch hazel family. Not fragrant, unfortunately, like a lot of our witch hazels are. This loropetalum up here, you'll notice anytime I show flowers on a loropetalum, same little frilly flowers that witch hazels have. So this is another witch hazel relative, in that same plant family. I've shown Perodia on the channel, or ironwood. Ironwood's just an absolutely amazing tree, but if you ever see it bloom, it's little red frilly flowers on them typically, and with some variability in them. Rhodolea has been on the channel before. Fothergilla, great native to the southeast United States. 4 or 5 species of Fothergilla. Also frilly little flower. That one is fragrant. But anyway, I have witch hazel relatives, but not an actual witch hazel. I think down when I did some tour videos down at Bree's house, she has several. Probably show up in her videos, and they may be blooming, right now actually. But I just don't have room for everything in this garden. But you should be fine down in 8B. But they'll probably bloom right at Christmas almost every year if they get a little cold on them beforehand. Let's see. So somebody has, they're in Phoenix, Arizona in zone 9B, and they got hydrangea serrata and some dahlias, and they're not fully dormant. Should they cut back the dahlias? No, I wouldn't cut back the dahlias as long as they're growing. Hydrangea serrata, I don't have any idea. I get a lot of questions from Phoenix, and I struggle with them because I know that you're zone 9B, like somebody would be in the middle of, Florida somewhere, but they have humidity and rainfall, and you have very seasonal rainfall, if any, or very little. But, this time of year, I guess, is when it would be raining. I don't know if that hydrangea will ever go dormant. I don't know if, I see serratas listed for up to zone 9B from, like zone 5 or 6A to 9B. But I have no idea if that would include Phoenix, a desert environment without a lot of moisture in the air. It seems like you just have to water it, and it may not have. It's going to need some dormancy, and so I just don't know. I have no idea if some winters it won't go dormant. It'll be an interesting experiment to find that out. But the word hydrangea, hydra or hydro means water, and it actually translates to water vessel. That's what hydrangea means, water vessel. And so that's when we see all of our hydrangeas, so wimpy in the middle of summer sometimes, so thirsty, they like their water. And so I don't know. I have no idea about growing, so I wrote that down just out of more curiosity. I'd love, keep us updated on, if this hydrangea serrata doesn't go to sleep this winter, will it actually bloom, the following spring? Does it need some dormancy? I would think it does. I have no idea. So somebody has a forest pansy redbud. They wanted to know if they should stake up a leader on it. So I guess what looked like the leader broke out of it. My forest pansy redbud at the old house did not have a leader. About this high up off the ground, if you go back and look at my forest pansy redbud video, about this high up off the ground, it split into 3 branches that kind of went out maybe at a 45-degree angle up and away from the tree, and then branches came off of those back into the interior, and it looked fine. If you think yours is too low where it's broken off, you could stake one and get it up to a certain point. But at some point, it mainly grows as kind of a layered tree. And the natural ones typically will do about the same thing. You'll see them kind of multi-trunked from about 3 feet up. So if that helps at all, I probably wouldn't worry about it all that much. Unless, again, it was so low that the branches were all going to be in my face, and then maybe stake up a leader. Okay, so somebody asked if the Chinese privet that had been cut down can be used as mulch. Yes, that would be awesome to use the non-native invasive plants to chip up and mulch your other plants. And then they asked how to kill the privet stumps. I think you're going to have to get them stump ground out, or you're going to have to cover them for some period of time. You cut off a privet to the ground, it's coming right back. It doesn't matter. Anything in that ligustrum family, you cut it to the ground. This non-invasive Chinese privet right here, the Sunshine Ligustrum. If I cut it to the ground tomorrow, it's coming back from the stump for sure. So keep keep that in mind. It needs to be. It's going to have to be ground in all likelihood, or dug out in some way, or at least at a minimum, you can try to cover them and see if you can rot them out that way. Let's see. So somebody asked if dwarf butterfly bush should be cut back, when and how much. Yeah, I cut back all butterfly bushes, no matter if they're ones that get 12 feet tall, which I have out in the front garden. Then I've got one over here that's 6 feet tall, and then I have the dwarf ones over there in the garden. I'll cut them back to about 1/3 of the height where they went to sleep. If I was given some sort of rough math, if it's a 2 foot tall, dwarf butterfly bush, I might cut it back to about 8 inches. But I do it late winter, right before the new growth starts on it. So sometime in March, you'll see me cutting back the butterfly bushes here in Raleigh, a bit later to the north. The main reason I'm always cutting them back is because they only bloom on new growth. So that thing has to get bigger in order to bloom, number one. Number two, they become structurally, they're not structurally sound plants normally. And the bigger they get, the more vulnerable they are to splitting and cracking and destroying themselves. Some people don't prune theirs and have no problem with it, but I've seen many where they've been allowed to get 10 or 12 feet tall, really, really thicken up. And then the first ice storm that comes along, windstorm comes along, either uproot them or crack them or destroy them. So a couple different reasons to cut them back. And again, mainly because it doesn't bloom on anything but new growth, and it has to grow. It has to get bigger in order to bloom. Okay. So somebody planted a bunch of green giant arborvitae amongst their hardwood trees. Will they live once the trees leaf out? Yeah, but they'll probably end up thin. I don't know how thick your trees are. Of course, I'm answering questions, and I don't know how thick the canopy of trees is. If you have good bright light, they'll probably be okay, but they're just going to be a little thin. If you have real dark spaces, I doubt they're going to perform very well at all. So, I just don't know what your trees look like. I've got this oak back here, and I talk about it dominating the space, but I had it limbed up right out of the gate here. I didn't show any content about it, but I had this thing limbed way, way up, so I'm getting good bright light under here. And so I have some full sun things, including a butterfly bush, that's doing fine because I got really great bright light. But initially there were limbs way down below that, and it was super dark back in that corner, and I don't think a lot of the things I have back there would have performed very well. So again, I don't know what kind of trees you got around them. So how far from the foundation should plants be planted? Thinking about planting some encore azaleas and if a plant says it gets 3 to 4 feet wide, you're going to need it to be at least 2 feet off the foundation. I'd probably be a hair more than that off the foundation, because I'd like a little airflow between my plants and the foundation, because you get plants like euonymus that get euonymus scale, or you get camellias that get T-scale, or you get azaleas that can get lace bugs, or you get, all of these plants, a lot of these plants come with an insect, kind of built in to them. If they're under stress, they're more vulnerable to. If you start packing things up against the foundation with no air movement behind them, I find that they're more vulnerable to those kinds of things. So, whatever the width says on the tag, divide that in half, and then add a little extra to that. So if it says it gets 4 feet wide, put it at least 2 feet from the house, and then go another 6 inches or so so you can keep it cut away from the house and keep some air movement around it. That probably would be a good idea. They also said they have clay soil, so make sure you're mounding everything up. I've got that clay planting video that I have on the channel that's probably way too long, and I need to probably update at some point. I saw somebody updated it for me recently, almost identical to my original video. But that you do need to mound things up a bit in the clay soil, especially near a foundation, because frequently around our foundations can stay a little more moist than more open areas away from the house. Let's see. So somebody has A pink camellia, and then out of the blue, you know, it just turned all, you know, it's all white. It's about 6 years old, and when they bought it, it was white, and now it's been, or when they bought it, it was pink, and now it's been white. Camellias freely sport, so they'll get branches on them that are, you know, just completely different. In fact, I have a camellia over here that's a sport from another one that I found not that long ago that I'm working on. It's just a completely different flower than the one that the plant that it was on. I would imagine this was some sort of sport that just kind of took over the plant. Would be the reason that it would just completely change color, is that it's just a sport. You know, and they will volunteer, you know, things like that. They're just completely different. And it may have been that it was a white camellia sometime way in the past, and somebody found a pink sport off of it, and then they took cuttings on it and then named the variety and have sold it for years, and then occasionally you'll get a branch on it that's white. And it's probably just taken over more of the plant over time. Somebody has some gardenias and they've dropped some leaves, and you know, they're down in the Atlanta area. So I don't know. So gardenias can be finicky things in our landscapes, especially in our clay soils through the Piedmont area. You know, and Atlanta is included in that, up to, you know, through Greenville, South Carolina, and up to Raleigh, and includes Greensboro, and up to Richmond, Virginia. That can be a little tricky in our clay soils, and so we can see some, typically that type of damage where it's being overwatered. We'll see yellowing in the new leaves initially, and you know, there's some root rot issues going on. If you're seeing that interior leaf thinning where the leaves turn bright yellow and then drop off, they'll always do that a little bit in the spring, because when they're about to flower, they'll put all of their energy into flowering and they'll shed a few leaves. If that shedding is excessive, they're kind of dry. I'm wondering if down here in Atlanta, we've been extremely dry this fall. If that's what it was just some sort of cycle of them being dry. And if it's excessive and they're really super thin, it may take a little while for them to recover from that. You can let them bloom, and they'll bloom in May, June, and then you can cut a little bit off the top and see if you can get them to regenerate a little bit. But I would imagine that if it was in the interior of the plant thinning, you know, that it was likely dry. Okay, so somebody asked the difference between silver caress and soft caress, and that's kind of funny. I had that question, you know, I pointed that out as one of my upcoming interesting new ones. It has a slightly broader leaf, and it has a really silver caress, has a very silver undertone to it. And weirdly, hold on, let's do this. Unbelievably, I had both of them. So there you go. You can see the broader leaf on the silver caress, flower buds on both of them. But this soft caress is a little more delicate foliage. This one has a slightly broader foliage, but that blue-green coloration. So both of them very, very useful. So that's it for this week. Again, you can ask gardening questions down in the comment section below this video, and I'll pick from those each week. I do have the shovel linked down below the video if you're interested in that. And thank you to again for everybody who has bought the Learn to Garden video series. There'll continue to be content all year, and there's a $25 discount code down below this video, and you can find that over on my website, HortTube.com. Thanks for watching.